Okay, today's session is part of our Startup Code series. We've had the first session on Google Ads, second one on TikTok, today is on LinkedIn, and the one on Friday is on how to create brilliant products and services. Today's guest is Mark Williams, also known as Mr. LinkedIn himself. He's an independent LinkedIn trainer and the founder of ETN LinkedIn Training. He's an experienced recruiting professional with over 19 years of experience in sales, financial services, and consulting. His services are centered around using LinkedIn as more than a recruiting tool, offering workshops to all industries and individuals that can benefit from LinkedIn's networking and business development tools. He helps business professionals leverage their networks and use their online profile to grow their reach. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Good to be here, Joe.
Great. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over to you. Looking forward to your presentation.
Okay, cool. Let me just get my slides up here. Cool. Okay. So very quick introduction. Joe's pretty much said it all there, really. I think probably the important thing to note about me is that I've been doing this for almost 11 years. And some of you might not have even been on LinkedIn 11 years ago. And certainly when I first started training LinkedIn, most people thought I was completely crazy to even think that anybody would want to pay somebody to learn how to use a social networking site like LinkedIn. And we've come a long way since then, haven't we? It's quite interesting that a previous speaker was on TikTok. It kind of made me think, well, here's for something completely different. But having said that, you might be surprised at the fact that LinkedIn isn't as different from some of those more light and social networks than the business social network of LinkedIn. I actually came over to Harvard a couple of years ago now, and this presentation is a little bit different to that one, although there are some similarities. So if you saw me then, you may see some examples and stories that I've talked about previously with you. And as Joe mentioned, I would encourage questions as we go through rather than kind of hold on till the end. Just type them. Joe will then interrupt me and ask me the question. I think I'd rather do it that way so that you get to know what you need to know straight away. Obviously, it's a possibility that I might answer your question with, we're just about to get to that. Okay, so I guess I'm thinking about this from a point of view of being a startup. And, 11 years ago, I was a startup with an idea and not much support from anybody else. And I know it can be quite challenging. It's one thing following what someone else has done. It's another thing coming up with something completely new. And for me, LinkedIn training was completely new. There was nobody in the UK or Europe doing it. There were a couple of people over your side of the world involved in it. But 11 years ago, we were a rare breed indeed. And that can cause its challenges. One of them is obviously funding. And I didn't need a lot of funding when I first started my business, which was a good job really. But if I'd had the need, LinkedIn would have been a great tool to approach people, but also just to become better known. People are far more likely to invest in you if they think that you've got some credibility on a platform like LinkedIn, credibility and visibility. Of course, one of the primary uses of LinkedIn these days is social selling and customer acquisition. That's a key use. So it never used to be, but these days I would say that's probably one of the most common reasons why people use LinkedIn. And with regards to potential customers, realistically, you're unlikely to do business with people unless you have some level of trust with them. The old saying of know, like, trust has never been truer. Online, it's really critical. And LinkedIn is the platform of choice for B2B. But even people in B2C, and I'll show you an example a little bit later on, you can actually gain a fair bit of leverage from LinkedIn these days as well. Of course, people still use LinkedIn for hiring. It's still very popular. LinkedIn themselves make most of their money from their hiring products. And so recruitment's always going to be a big thing on LinkedIn. The vast majority of people using LinkedIn aren't looking for a job or looking to recruit anyone. But that's how LinkedIn themselves monetize the platform. So it's always going to be important. And of course, once you start getting into online networking, there's all kinds of ways of using it. Things like idea validation, testing things, polls, yes, but also just putting out information within groups, just testing the water, seeing what people think of certain things. Yeah, it can be a great environment for that kind of stuff as well. And of course, collaboration. I can think of many times in my career where I've either bumped into someone or someone's been introduced to me, all through LinkedIn, that's ended up with some really successful partnerships. And of course, often when you're a startup, you're doing everything on a shoestring budget. And the good news is that with LinkedIn, the only thing that it requires from you is time. Sure, you can go down the advertising route, and I'm not going to get into that today. I think that's a very different subject. Advertising, whether it be on LinkedIn or other social platforms, is an art in itself. What I want to talk about today is what you can do on a shoestring budget, which is basically organic reach. It's been able to become better known. And essentially what you're trying to achieve here is visibility. As a startup, the problem is you might have a great product, you might have a great idea, you may have something that can fly, but it's never going to fly unless enough people know about you and it. And LinkedIn provides you with that opportunity at very little cost. Actually, no cost really. You really don't need to pay for a premium account to do well on LinkedIn. I know many people that have great success without paying a dime. But you do need time, and there's no question about that. There are no shortcuts to that. And again, I will come back to that point a little bit later on. So as a quick starting point, if you like, let's just cover some of the basics of LinkedIn. Some of you may well be familiar with some of these, but these are what I would call the kind of basic essentials of using LinkedIn. Everything starts with your profile, and my rule of thumb on this is that you need to read your profile and feel proud of it. Now, if you're not, and you're anywhere short of that, you've got some work to do. In addition to that, a profile in isolation, even if it's a great profile, isn't really going to do you much good, because it needs to be visible, and you need to make sure enough people can find you and see it. And to do that, you need to build a relevant and expansive network. And what I mean by that is the rule of thumb is you don't want to just connect to people that you know, but at the same time, it's not about counting up connections so that you get 20,000 or the maximum 30,000. It's not about that at all. Connections are picked and are specific and relevant, but at the same time, they're not just a very unique niche or niche set of people. You very much need to be expansive in the way that you build your network. A key mistake that people make on LinkedIn is they think, right, I've got this huge, great audience. I'm going to get out there and start promoting my products. But we've all seen it a million times and nobody likes it. People don't want to be sold to. Promotional and selling posts just don't work. They fail almost every time. You have to bring a networking mentality to LinkedIn. You have to think about it as a platform to meet people, build relationships, and build visibility on the back of that. That then does give you the opportunity to be a little bit promotional once you've established that, but never start off with promotional content. Another advantage of LinkedIn, of course, is as in any networking situation, you can start to build relationships with people and then leverage those relationships for introductions. Huge opportunity there if you actually think about it. I can think of many people that I've never met from all around the world that I feel I know fairly well, having networked with them online for years. And I would feel quite comfortable about approaching them, having seen that they're connected to someone that I would like to be introduced to. And I've done that many times. And I've also had people ask me on many occasions as well. And not every occasion I'll grant them that introduction, by the way. Sometimes they're perhaps being a little bit cheeky. But look, the opportunity is always there to do that. If you put the effort in and you get to know people and build that trust, then you have that opportunity. And it's very easy in business to say, oh, introductions are a route to success. Well, how do they actually happen? So, well, I don't know, you may work with someone or have a good relationship with someone or be doing business with someone and say to them, hey, look, if you're happy with what we're doing for you, do you know anybody else that would benefit from our products or services?
Hey, Mark, we have a question.
Yeah.
Peter's asking, how do you do an introduction on LinkedIn? Do you mean like a group message or? Uh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways of doing that. So the typical style these days, there used to be a feature where you could do introductions on LinkedIn. It wasn't very good, but these days the best way to do that is a message where you just literally add the other person into the message and then remove the person making the introduction would just remove themselves from it. But that's the actual mechanics of it. But of course, the reality of it is that what would happen is I would go to find someone. I might do a search. I'm looking for someone of a certain background or certain experience or whoever that might be. And that person would be a second tier connection. So I'd be looking at second tier connections. Then I'd look at who actually is the person that makes that person a second tier connection. So the mutual connection between us. And then look at who I have a strong relationship with of those people. And then I would approach them through a direct message and say, hey, look, I noticed that you're connected to John Doe. How would you feel about introducing me? So directly ask that person to introduce you through a direct message. Then the mechanics of how they would do that is the best way for them to do that would be to create a message, a group message with all three of you in it, and then they remove themselves from that message. Of course, it doesn't have to be done through LinkedIn. My point is that you discover the opportunity through LinkedIn. The other way of doing it would be to go to a connections profile and look at their connections, provided they have them open, and by default, most people do. And then you can search their connections and have a look through their connections, decide who you think might be of interest, and then ask for the introduction. Of course, using common sense here, what you don't do is pick one person who's been particularly helpful to you and then bombard them with introduction requests, one a week for 10 weeks, right? That's going to get pretty tedious very quickly for people. But there is an opportunity there and it can be done. The key to LinkedIn success, and this is something that's become very apparent over the last 5 years of using LinkedIn, really. Before that, it was much harder to engage with people. But these days, the key is to engage. And what I mean by that is that taking that networking mentality, you are not preaching, you are not talking at people, you are absolutely using every opportunity to engage in conversations, two-way conversations. That builds relationships. It also educates the lurkers, lurkers meaning people that are on LinkedIn but never engage. So you wouldn't even know they're there, but they're seeing the content and they're seeing your activity. And those people start to learn more about you. The amount of times I've won business from people who say to me, I've followed you on LinkedIn for years and, I'm interested in talking to you about training. And I got to think, well, I've never engaged with this person at all. Not direct messaging, no likes, that they've never done anything. But the thing is, they have seen me and they've learned more about me over that time. Obviously, you've got to be visible in order for that to happen. So bringing that together, and we'll get into more detail on this particular point, but regular activity is key to building relevancy. And what I mean by that is commenting, direct messaging, posting and replying to comments on your posts builds what LinkedIn call relevancy. And that's really about the algorithm and how the algorithm is constantly trying to work out who it feels is most relevant to you and vice versa. Obviously, approaching 700 million people on LinkedIn, clearly not everybody you follow, you're going to see their stuff, right? That's just never going to happen. And so LinkedIn has to make decisions about what you see and also who you see in your search results as well. And it bases that on relevancy, and relevancy is based on a complex amount of things in that algorithm that makes those decisions. But the key things that you can do to influence are commenting, direct messaging, posting and replying. They're the things that make the biggest difference. There are some things in a profile you can do to influence it, sort of mirroring the profile of those that you're interested in influencing. But primarily that comes via regular activity. LinkedIn
Mark,
is...
sorry, Mark, there's another question here from Stefan.
Yeah.
He's asking basically, how do you use LinkedIn to find sort of a strategic partner, maybe getting very granular in your search, finding someone that could maybe be a co-founder or some strategic partner?
Yeah, you're very dependent on what people might put in their profiles. You can search in an advanced search on LinkedIn, people search, without having a premium account. And you can search by job title, for instance. And you can search for a variety of different job titles in different industries and different areas, and you can do that. But you are obviously dependent on what they put in their profile. Of course, the other alternative of finding people is through content. And so one technique that I often talk to clients about is where what you're doing is you understand the topics that are of interest to the people that you want to reach, and you find content. You can search for content as well as you can search for people, again by keywords. You can also search via hashtags, but actually keyword searching is better for content. And you find relevant content from anybody on LinkedIn, and you engage with it and you comment on it. And of course what happens is the people that you're interested in are also looking at that content, and through that they find you. A lot of what you're doing with LinkedIn from a business development point of view is making yourself easily available to those that would wish to work with you, or buy from you. And so that's another way of kind of building visibility amongst a very relevant audience. And through that content, you will find people that you can then approach as well. I guess what we're really talking about with LinkedIn a lot of the time is personal branding. And I think one of the things about being a startup, and almost irrespective of what you do, is that your personal brand is critical. And there are so many examples out there of people that have done exceptionally well by basing their startup around their own brand, their personal brand. People buy from people. And you have an opportunity with LinkedIn to accelerate the growth of your personal brand. Let me give you some examples. So this guy, Simon Bourne, is someone that I've interviewed on my podcast a while back now, actually. And the first time I came across Simon was, I would imagine probably about 5 years ago now, maybe even longer. And he was just a guy working in a furniture shop. And in this furniture shop where they manufactured furniture and sold furniture, and he was in a sales position. But he noticed that they were throwing a lot of leather scraps away. And he thought, that stuff could be used or sold. So he asked the owner if he could take the leather scraps, and they said, yeah, absolutely. We're just throwing them away, so you're welcome to have them. And he literally sold them on eBay just as bags of scraps of leather. But then he started to understand a little bit more about why people were buying these scraps of leather and realized that they were making stuff out of them. And he thought, I could do that. So he started making belts and things like that. Which he quite enjoyed doing, and that was moderately successful. He sold his products largely through eBay. And then he came across the idea of shoes. And that's how his business developed, basically. Now, that story I know because he walked us through that story via many posts on LinkedIn. I also happen to know that he had some serious challenges with mental health as well. And I remember when he got married as well. There's various things that happened to this guy throughout his story that I'm aware of before I even got to speak to him. And that is personal branding. This guy built his business through the story of how he created it. And through sharing that story in a very open and authentic way with a growing audience on LinkedIn, people really started to buy into it. Now, that is a really strong personal brand, but it's based around authenticity. And the way Simon presents himself is very real and very authentic, using the power of storytelling to bring people into his business, into his challenges, into his own personal challenges, as well as his business challenges. And through that, people really bought into him as much as his shoes. I mean, don't get me wrong, his shoes are amazing, right? But so many people that buy from him initially really just bought into Simon and the guy that he was. And that's the power of personal branding. Now, this guy, literally, he did start very much on LinkedIn as just telling his story. And his story was obviously about his business. So we knew what he did, but he never sold shoes. He never went out there trying to promote his shoes. As he developed an audience and started getting a level of success on LinkedIn, he got a little bit more cheeky and started being a bit more promotional. And he got away with it because people loved him, right? And they bought into his story and they really liked what they saw. And so they don't mind him selling his shoes then. It's just if some guy comes along and starts trying to sell your shoes, everyone's like, "Ah, go away. We're not interested in that." Yeah. It might seem a subtle difference, but it's very key to establish that brand first. Now he's B2C, all right, his shoes are not cheap. So a lot of the people that would buy his shoes are people in business. But at the end of the day, he is a business to consumer business. Just to give you some examples of the kind of stuff that Simon's done over the years, he shares things like, he's got this new van. It's just a picture of a van, right? But he's asking the question, what do you think about my new van? You're my followers. You're actually involved in my story. And I'm proud of the fact I've got this new van and I want to tell you all about it. And I'm interested in what you think. 2,661 likes, 388 comments, over 200,000 views. Now, one of the rights of videos don't get quite the same number of views because they're counted slightly differently. But a video of him looking after his own shoes, right? Just bringing people into the whole aspect of what he does by demonstrating what he does, but showing his personality all the way through. Clever posts. This is how he built this kind of brand and reputation. And, at the end of the day, he's a very likable guy. And that's obviously a major benefit that he has. And part of what makes him likable is that he's vulnerable and authentic in the way that he presents himself. This developed from there into further stages on LinkedIn where now we're all used to unboxing videos for tech products, right? But Simon gets people who send in videos of them unboxing his shoes when they receive them, which is a bit of a first for me. I've certainly never seen anything like that before. But this is how excited people are. And and that is all about the whole feel of the business. That's all about, that they've followed this guy and they're really into his story. They see his struggles. They also see the quality of his product, and then they go, and they aspire, I've seen posts from people who say, my target for this year is to be able to buy shoes from Simon Bourne, fantastic thing for someone to say, but it's an aspirational product. But part of that is all about the way he's built the brand around his own personality. I have to share this with you as well. This kind of cracks me up because this is the guy. This sometimes happens on LinkedIn. You see someone and you're aware of who they are, but then memory doesn't always serve you well and you can't remember exactly who they are, which I suppose isn't great in a way because you'd hope they could just get straight in touch with you. But the thing is, when you're someone like Simon and you get those kind of results from your posts, then things like this happen. So this guy's just putting out there, does anybody know that shoe guy is on LinkedIn? And he gets 15 comments, which, all right, in comparison to viral posts is nothing, but it's not meant to, it's just a guy. He's not got much of a following, but he puts out this, and then people are going, everybody, and all those 15 comments, I can't show you them now, it's just a screenshot. All those 15 comments were links to his profile. Simon Bourne's the guy you want. I mean, how amazing, right? That you've built that kind of brand that when someone just puts it out there, they can't remember who that guy is, then everyone's jumping in going, that's the guy you need, because they want to be associated with him in that way. And this guy doesn't really do much on Facebook, does a bit on Instagram, I think, these days. It's a very visual product, so that kind of works for him a bit more. But basically built his business on LinkedIn. And that's how he did it. And this is business to consumer, right? Well, that's the power of building your personal brand through authentic storytelling on LinkedIn. A bit closer to home for you guys.
Hey, Mark, there's a couple.
Yeah.
Mark, there's a couple of questions here in the chat about personal brand.
Yeah, fire away.
The shoe guy, has a great personal brand. Florence is asking if there's any examples of failed personal brands, or somewhere that like maybe bad practice.
I don't have any off the top of my head, to be honest with you. I'm sure there are plenty out there for sure. I mean, the common, I can't give you an example, but the common reasons why people fail is that they try too hard to promote their product. And so that their perception of what they should be doing on LinkedIn just falls flat, because what they're not doing is being authentic and real, right? That's what Simon gets right, and there's a lot of other people that get that right as well. And it's the example in front of us here, Shay, is also a good example of that. Very different style, completely different type of personality. A big user of videos on LinkedIn, but literally over about 3 years, she's kind of come from nowhere and built a very, very strong business and reputation on LinkedIn. And she's always very much been herself, in the way that you could watch her videos and think, she's not my cup of tea at all. I don't like her at all. She's definitely, this is a term that won't mean anything over in your part of the world, I'm sure, but we have a term in the UK called Marmite, which is just a spread you put on bread. But you either love it or you hate it, right? There's nothing in between. And I remember one of the things that Shay said about a personal brand is, look, I'd ever want to be a 6 or a 7 out of a 10. I either want to be a 1 or a 9, right? And that's about authenticity. So the failures often come when people are trying to please everyone and not really be authentic to who they really are. And that is absolutely the case on LinkedIn. People will buy into you because you're very real, and you have a real distinct flavor to your brands, which is who you are. And she's an interesting person to follow because she very much is the epitome of a personal brand, really. Video is such a strong medium on LinkedIn, and she built her business on the back of really good videos. She does other types of posts as well, as you can see here. She's got 300,000 followers. She would be disappointed if she got less than 200 comments on a post. That one there with the videos, video post numbers are always a little bit lower. But that's low for her, 175 comments, which for most of us would be like, Christmas come early. But that's the power of it,
Yep.
So was there another question?
Yeah, great. There's actually a couple more in the chat. So Malay is asking, as the shoe guy, told his story, what about the followers that didn't see the story the first time? Is there a way maybe to repurpose or repost that content again?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't actually think Simon's done that much. I'd have to check actually if there's a way of being able to get back to his story. I guess in many respects, he builds the following through sharing the story as it happens, and that's the power of it. He then becomes known. It's a little bit like that, you walk into, in the days when we could walk into a room full of people, remember those days, and somebody seems to be very popular, and you kind of, there's a crowd in a corner and they're all listening to what one person's got to say. And you kind of just go, who's that? I want to know what that's all about. And then you're naturally like a magnet. They just kind of pull you in. And it's a little bit like that, really. So the original people that followed him followed his story. And then other people just follow because other people follow. Yeah. And then they buy into him because of the way he comes across. Right. It's interesting, actually. His numbers are not as good as they used to be. And he doesn't quite get the same success in posts on LinkedIn as he used to, but I don't think he's one of those challenging situations that any startup gets into when initially you've got the time to dedicate to LinkedIn and put the time in. And then once you get really successful, it's much harder and inevitably things drop off a bit, but I guess you've got momentum by then. So it matters less and you've always got the opportunity of recruiting people and building your resources. But so I don't think he does particularly share his startup story with people, and I don't think it matters to them now because he's already well known and they want to follow him because lots of people do. And he produces really nice shoes, and it's more that I think that people tag on to these days.
All right, we have 5-6 more questions, but I think it's better let's let you get through the presentation so we don't run out of time, and
sure,
we'll save them to the end.
Indeed. Okay. So if we're thinking about content, which kind of moving on from, so we know we want to build a personal brand, but how are we going to do that? And what kind of content are we going to put out? A lot of people struggle with this bit. This is the bit that kind of catches people out. You might be wondering why there's a picture of a chair. Well, that'll become clear as I go through this. So content should be either one or multiple of these 5 things: challenging, helpful, authentic, interesting, and relevant. And it's just an easy way, I think, of remembering the things that you need to hit with content. Posts on LinkedIn should achieve all of those if possible, but in reality, you're probably going to achieve 2 or 3 of them max. Okay. And if you can always try and hit those, at least 2 or 3 of them in every post, you're not going to be far wrong. And it's a good way of thinking about how you actually structure your content. So, challenging can be great. That challenging is quite a polite word, I think, for controversial. That's something that either makes you think or kind of gets you going a little bit. Those posts always do well. But then the flip side of that is something really helpful. That genuinely is something that people need. Giving good information to people that is stuff that they really need is a fantastic way of building a brand. Authenticity, we talked about. The interesting meaning really that you understand your audience, you understand the stuff that's going to intrigue them, and you put out content that's genuinely going to capture their imagination. And obviously relevance, the amount of times that you can get a successful post that's completely irrelevant to your target audience, don't get me wrong, because it's just generally popular. But you've got to largely stick to relevancy, and you've got to make sure that you're putting out content on a regular basis that hits the mark in terms of the type of stuff that your audience is going to find highly relevant. Building that into the specifics of how we go about posting on LinkedIn, I just wanted to break through into the different types of content. So you've got 5 broadly. You've got photo, video, document, articles, but also text-only posts. Very quick overview of this. So you've got video. Don't post YouTube videos or anything like that. External videos don't do well on LinkedIn. You want to upload a video directly into LinkedIn as native video. Probably the best thing you can do in terms of developing your relationship with your audience and your personal brand. They're also great for dwell time. LinkedIn measures how long people are spending on a post. And if someone's watching your full video, that can be useful to you. Although the video shouldn't be very long. But if they watch all of it, let's say it's 3 minutes, that's good dwell time. Views are good. They're measured in a slightly different way. So someone has to watch your video for 3 seconds for it to count as a view. So the number's always less than other types of posts. Of course, it takes a bit of time putting them together. So that can be tough. And also they can be more challenging to engage because people focus on the video rather than engaging with the post. And engagement's really important for distribution. Now, image posts are great for stopping someone scrolling, right? So they see it because the image stands out to them. And that's a big advantage. I've seen lots of image posts do very well. They don't get great dwell time because you just look at the image and then you move on, right? And increasingly, the algorithm is penalizing posts like that. Now, the dwell time factor in the algorithm is relatively recent. And so we haven't quite yet seen this impact. But my prediction is that image posts will start to do less well because they don't hold you there long enough. But they can attract reshares, and reshares are not a good thing on LinkedIn because reshares don't do very well, believe it or not. They very rarely succeed. But the problem with an image that someone likes is that they might like it, but they'll also reshare it, and it doesn't actually add any value to your post or to theirs for that matter. Just to give you a few tips on video. We haven't got time to go into this in a lot of detail, but basically it's Instagram format. Square format works best on LinkedIn. It's bigger, stands out more. Keep them short, like I mentioned before, 3 minutes max, really. You're talking with people at work here. They haven't got time to watch a 20-minute video. It's never going to happen. And also, nobody has sound on. I don't think LinkedIn have ever done a survey, but I know Facebook did one. And I think it was 80 or 85% of people said they weren't on Facebook, they have sound switched off. Well, if that's Facebook, right, it's going to be more on LinkedIn because they're at work, right? So you need subtitles with videos. I'll show you a few resources later on of things that can help you with that. Image posts, the challenge is to make them comment worthy. This is a great example, 147,000 comments, but it's an image post for sure, but she's asking a question. And therefore, if you ask a question, there's a reason for people to comment, right? So if you're going to do image posts, always be mindful of making them comment worthy and not just something someone can look at and go, oh, great, and then move on, because then you're missing the engagement. And that's really important for the distribution of the post. Other types of content, you've got document posts, sort of the newest one that have been around a few years now. These are great for dwell time. I'll go on to more detail about them in a minute. And they're good for clicks as well. Now, again, the algorithm looks at that. So the more clicks you get on a post, the more likely it is to want to redistribute that to more followers, right? And that helps your view count. With all types of video, image, and document posts, they do have some challenges in terms of attracting engagement and comments. And I think part of that is because people are concentrating on the content itself, and so don't always think to then comment. They're nothing like as good as text-only posts for that. Text-only posts, moving on to that, fantastic for comments, definitely the best type of post for comments. And if they're written up to the 1,300 characters that you can use, then they're great for dwell time, because it takes people time to read them as well. Also, they have to click on the post to read the full post, right? So that gives you a click, and that's good and helps with views. But they can be easier to miss, of course, because they're just text in the feed. But people always underestimate text posts. They're actually very, very powerful. And then you've got articles. Now, articles are like blogging on LinkedIn. So this is 500 words plus. Great for establishing authority and credibility. They used to be very popular on LinkedIn and good for engagement, much less so these days. They're nothing like as visible as they used to be. And so it's much harder to get views and engagement on them. But if you know your subject, you need to write about it and demonstrate that you really understand your subject. And often that is not done. It's not easy to do that in a post. It's much shorter form. Posts are about engagement, whereas articles are about credibility, knowledge enhancement, right, for the reader. So it's a very different medium, but articles are definitely something that you should consider doing, but not in anything like the volume that you would with posts. So a quick overview on some of those document posts look like this. This is, you can do them as a PowerPoint or you can do them in PDF format. They work best when there's not much on the slide and you have plenty of slides. Now, the example I'm going to give you is a bit extreme, but just to make the point, the more slides there are, the more we have to click. So I have to click on the right-hand side of a document post to see the next page. Kind of works like a flip book, really, just going through and going through, right? Every time I click, of course, that's a signal to the algorithm that I'm actually really engaged with this post. So that's a good thing. This one here, which is from a guy called Dan Kelso, is taking it to extremes, really. I'll just skip ahead in a second. You'll see, eventually I get to number 80, and then we see how it ends. But so it is an extreme example, but you get the point, right? As you're building a story through words and images and making people click to see the next page, you're already playing to the algorithm and this thing called dwell time, which is very important. And then finally, text only. Jonathan is a lawyer in Florida and very successful on LinkedIn. Look at this, 4,500 comments and 85,000 likes. This was done a few years ago. Phenomenally successful post. But you'd think, looking at that, well, who'd want to read that, right? I mean, look at it. It's just a big block of text. It's not easy on the eye at all, is it? And yet, that got 7 million views, okay? Now, how did that happen? Well, of course, the reality of text-only posts, and this is the secret to them, is that's not what we see in the feed, right? What we see in the feed is that. Now, when this post was done a few years ago, text-only posts, you only saw the first 3 lines. So what you see is, take that third line, around 12:15, my office reaches out to him, no response, he rolls, see more. So you have to click on it, right? Now, by that time, you're interested and you're happy to read the rest of that text, right? And that's why you get the likes and the comments. They've changed it a little bit. It's not 3 lines now, it's 5 lines on a text-only post for some reason. You need to be careful with 5 lines because that can also look quite heavy on the eye. So you might want like a space line in there to make it look a bit easier. But even so, text-only posts are fantastic for engagement and often underutilized by people who, you know, steer towards video or image or document posts, thinking that they stand out more in the feed. But actually, text-only do work very, very well. I mean, they're the different types of posts. I mean, if I was to summarize all of that, any post you write on LinkedIn, your aim is to start a conversation, because comments are absolute gold. Every time someone comments gives you the opportunity to reply. Every time someone comments, the context of that is that that will mean that it will appear on the homepage feed of their most engaged followers who know them. And then they see their comment and they're brought into the conversation because that person that they know is in that conversation. And effectively what you're doing is gathering a greater and greater audience. So every time you write a post, aim to start a conversation, and then you'll do far better. Very quick negative stuff for you. Be careful of links. It used to be that LinkedIn used to penalize link posts. We believe they don't do that anymore, but even so, they're not successful. And the reason for that is that if someone clicks on your link, it's taking them away from the post. So why would they engage with it, right? So it's not a very effective way of posting on LinkedIn. Neither is promotional, turns people cold. You have to earn the right to be promotional on LinkedIn. Images that are just likable. Likes don't have the power of comments. And whilst it's okay to get a like, it's far better to get comments. And images often, people just go, oh yeah, great, like, I'll share that, but nothing more than that. Anybody that's out there doing a kind of, look at me, we've won an award, we've done this, we are that, I am this, right? If it's all me, or us, just turns people cold on LinkedIn. People aren't interested in that stuff. Yeah. And the good old quotes and statements. I mean, some people like them, but it's lazy content, right? Well, let's just take a quote from somebody famous and just post it on LinkedIn, hoping that that's going to go somewhere. They very rarely do. So try and avoid that. And anything less than 5 lines means that there won't be a see more, right? And you need the see more to show, because if it does, people click on it. That's a message to the algorithm, and then it's going to be distributed further. That's also really important for any post. And then finally, articles, as I mentioned, 500 words plus, thought leadership, credibility. Yes, they can show in your profile in what's called the featured section, but you have to manually put them in. It used to be that they just automatically showed in your profile. They don't anymore, which has reduced the visibility of them even further. But as you can see, you can get interaction on articles, and they are great for credibility. Quick word of warning. The temptation. Look, you're a startup business. You've got a lot of things on your plate, right? And I get that. And some of them are very tempting, such as automation, because you think, I could save myself a lot of time just by using some kind of automation product to just bang out either posts or engagement or direct messaging or invitations to connect. I strongly recommend you avoid it. That kind of stuff, certainly direct messaging, only works at scale, and LinkedIn is designed to make that difficult. So you only ever get a low hit rate when you do that kind of spammy type activity. And it might seem like a good thing that you're banging out loads of messages, but your hit rate will be low, and LinkedIn make it particularly difficult to send out lots of messages. So that's not really effective. It also can be really damaging for your reputation. If your hit rate's low, then all those other people potentially think worse of you as a result. I also think you've got to think about the network. If this is a valuable tool to you now, protect it, right? If you spam people, that's not protecting it. That puts people off using LinkedIn, and it won't be around for long, right? So I think it's important to think that way. But also, from a more selfish point of view, using automation puts your account at serious risk. Now, I know people, one guy in particular, 85,000 followers, got tempted by automation, lost his account, just gone, never got it back. That will happen. That happens quite a lot. LinkedIn are absolutely determined to stop automation on their platform. Of course, one alternative to that is to outsource, but you need to be careful with outsourcing, because what we're talking here is about authentic relationship building. Someone has to know you really well to do that on your behalf. So, all right, if it's someone that really does know you that well, it can work. I've seen it work with like PAs to CEOs and stuff like that. I've worked together for years. That can work. But, you know, contacting someone through Fiverr and asking them to do your LinkedIn for you, I wouldn't advise it. At the end of the day, you got to be authentic. And I've said that numerous times during this session, haven't I? So I won't say it again. the end of the day, I don't know too many businesses that aren't successful without serious effort. And LinkedIn is a tool that requires some serious time and effort. That's what you've got to do. It doesn't cost you much other than time, but you've got to dedicate that time. And that's when you get it to work. So in summary, and then I'll tackle your questions in a second. You need to make sure you've got a good profile. You've got to be proud of it. Right, top quality profile. Build a good, relevant network, expansive. Understand the topics that are important to your target audience. I mean, that's just a marketing thing generally, but find those topics on LinkedIn and get involved in commenting on them. Be part of the community that gathers around content and topics. And then you'll start getting noticed more. Make your feed, your homepage feed, more relevant by unfollowing people. You'll connect to lots of people over a period of time, and some of them will produce content that you don't want to see. And an easy way of managing that is just to unfollow them. You can be connected and not follow. By default, you follow anybody you're connected to, but you can unfollow them. I'll show you how you do that in a second. And then posting in the right way, using different ways, all the 4 different types of posts are all relevant at different times. 2 to 3 times a week is the sweet spot I've found personally. So that thing about unfollowing, very simple. Poor old Brian here. He posts an us or me type post, and I've seen enough of this. So 3 dots at the top of that post. I see the option to hide the post. That's going to work to a limited degree, but it does at least give a message to the algorithm. But I can just unfollow him. And you have to be harsh with this. Just unfollow people, right? Only follow people that are adding value to your feed. That makes it easier for the algorithm to give you the kind of content that you want to see that allows you more opportunity to engage. Okay, so I'll tackle questions now, and I'll leave this slide up. This is really just all the examples that I've shown you. So Simon and his profile, Jonathan, the text-only guy, Shay, the video. Mark Gaisford was one I showed you before, who is a video producer on LinkedIn, does some great videos. Your images, you can get free images from Pixabay, royalty free and free. And Canva's a great site to use. I'm sure you're aware of that for image posts. Video, if you want to put captions on your video, Clips or Clipomatic for iOS, AutoCap for Android. I'm a fan of using mobile for video. It's just so much quicker and easier. And the final resource, of course, is my podcast, which is a weekly show where I talk about all things LinkedIn. All right, Joe. So what are the other questions that we had?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. That was really insightful. We have so many questions and we have 9 minutes left. So let's try to get to them as quick as we can. Malay's asking, what day and time are best to post?
Yeah. Do you know what? This has to be a suck it and see scenario, trial and error. There is no simple answer to that. Traditionally, you would say Friday afternoon, Saturday and Sunday are not great times, but I actually know someone that gets great results on a Sunday. Know your audience, right? I've never been a fan of posting on a Monday morning or a Friday afternoon or at the weekend, personally. Mornings seem to be better than afternoons, and lunchtime is often a good time to post. 60% of LinkedIn use is on mobile, and therefore people are, out at lunch, having a coffee or whatever, and maybe notice things on their phone more. But you know what? Timing of posts is nothing like as important as quality, right? Okay. That's an obvious point, but actually, rather than worry about when you post, it's far more important to worry about what you post about. That is significantly more important. But that gives you some idea, but you really have to trial and error with that one.
Sure. Ali's asking if you can put the last summary slide before the last one. If you could just put it up instead of this slide.
The summary slide?
Yeah. Maybe the one before.
The next steps.
Or next steps, yeah.
Okay.
Another question here regarding the optimal video duration to get that dwell time that you mentioned. Short enough for people to watch and quickly to move on. What do you recommend in terms of length?
I would normally say up to 3 minutes. A lot of my videos that I've done have been less than a minute, actually. But since dwell time came into play, there is an argument for a little bit longer, but it is a balance because you are dealing with people at work who are busy and their time short. So yeah, you have to be, sorry, I didn't mean to press that. You have to be conscious of that as well. So it is a balance.
Mm-hmm.
Video isn't as good for dwell time as other types of posts. Without a doubt, document is the best for dwell time, but text only can be very good for dwell time as well.
Great. Another question here on how do you follow the news about the changes in the algorithm? Is it just listening to your podcast, or what do you recommend to learn about the LinkedIn changes?
I think you answered that question very well.
Uh-huh.
Look, I mean, it's interesting actually, because a big part of my job is keeping on top of those things, and it's almost impossible, you know, because LinkedIn never tell us a thing, right? They very rarely announce any changes, only very occasionally, and normally well after the event. I'm lucky because the podcast has been going with nearly up to 300 episodes, and so we have a strong following, and people know that it's a great resource for that. So people contact me. So I kind of have eyes all over the world of people that are spotting things. So we tend to get onto things quite early, but I can't guarantee we'll always cover everything. Follow people on LinkedIn who, you know, are LinkedIn specialists, because every time they find something new, they will post about it. Is obviously another way around it. But that's always been my tool for educating and keeping people up to date with what's going on LinkedIn. I know it's not a visual thing, podcasting, but there's show notes with, you know, a backup to that. So
another question here from John. He's asking, what's a better way to post an article? Is it natively on LinkedIn, or maybe posting on Medium and linking it from LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, Medium's a great platform for long form content, but the downside, of course, is that if you're sending people away from LinkedIn to Medium and you're posting a link, then you're not going to get the engagement on your post, right? So my answer would be probably both, because it's just a straightforward copy and paste. My understanding, and I'm no SEO or Google expert, but my understanding is that that's absolutely okay to do that. And what you'll find is that you'll get more engagement on LinkedIn through an article than you will by doing a post linking to Medium or somewhere else, or your own website. If you're sending people away from LinkedIn, generally that doesn't work well. If you're sending people somewhere else within LinkedIn, that's okay.
Great. Peter's asking, how do you reach someone who has a following but is not open to new connections and direct messages?
So engage with them. Now, they may not be that active, and they're not open to connecting, and they're not open to direct messages. Then you're in a difficult position, right? There's no easy way around that. But if they are engaging on LinkedIn and you understand what is important to them, then that's the way to do it. Think of it as networking, and they're over in the corner talking to some people and joining the conversation, right? And get to know them that way.
John is asking, when you post a article, do you recommend posting it on your personal feed as well as a group maybe that you're part of? That's maybe a private group.
If you're going to, either way, you would post it on your feed, and you would want to post it in a relevant group, but it's not so much where you post it, it's how you post it. So what people do, they write an article and then they just post it, like, so it's just a headline. But actually a post and a group post are designed to be conversation starters. So what you need to do is create posts that are about the topic and then guide people to the article. So what you're trying to do is create a conversation around the topic and then guide people to the long form content rather than just post it. That makes sense.
Gerald is asking if it makes sense to pay for a premium LinkedIn.
It's a very good question, but a very difficult one to answer succinctly. It depends on so many things, but all the stuff that I've talked about in terms of content, right, you do not need to have a premium account for. There's no advantages there. There are other advantages in terms of things like direct messaging and who's viewed your profile, and you know, we could go on for 10 minutes about all the things that it might give you, but it doesn't give you any advantage in terms of content and engagement.
Peter's asking, sort of maybe tactically, how do you guide a user to an article? Is it just by using the right hashtags or tagging them maybe?
You can tag people as long as you don't overdo it. So know your marketplace, know your environment, tag people who are appropriate in a post that then links to the article. Yes, you can use hashtags. They're not widely used on or understood on LinkedIn. but there's no harm in using them. LinkedIn recommend up to 3, and I've found that actually does work rather than going too heavy on hashtags. And also use popular hashtags that are widely followed. If you look at what's in your feed, it's from people that you follow, but it's also often a multiple reason why it's in your feed, such as someone that you follow posted it and someone that you follow commented on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, another multiple reason would be someone that you follow posted it and a hashtag that you followed was used in it. That's a multiple reason why it appears in your feed. So they can be ways of getting more viewers to an article, and also putting it in the featured area of your profile.
Great. We'll close off with this last question from Jujubi. She's asking, what are the key elements that make a profile exceptional? You did share a lot of best practice, but what would you say maybe a couple of things that make it exceptional?
Exceptional. Good profile picture, a good background image that just makes it look like you've made a real effort. But without question, you've got to get people to look at your profile in the first place, and a headline's key for that. You know, so when I come across you, the words in your headline make me go, oh, that's relevant to me. So that gets people to your profile. And then the thing that makes the biggest difference in your profile, probably 2 things actually. One is your about section, a well-written, authentic about section, maybe with a story in there that gives people more understanding about you and your personality and your why. That often works well. And the other area would be recommendations. A really strong recommendation from a credible, relevant source can make a big difference to someone if they're interested. They have to be quite interested to get to your recommendations because they're quite far down. But presumably they are. And if they are, then that can be the game changer.